What is going on, guys? It's Reflex here, and today's going to be probably a longer video. I'm not entirely sure. I could probably do it quick, but there's 3 platinums that I got in this video. I'm only going to show off 2 because these are the main ones that I want to talk about, and the third one I will just briefly talk about at the end because it's one of the easiest platinums you can get. But as you guys can tell from the title of the video, I got the platinums for Spider-Man Remastered as well as Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, surprisingly, I didn't end up playing Spider-Man when it first released back in 2018, even though I'm a big Spider-Man fan. That is my favorite superhero. That's my favorite Marvel hero. I mean, he's my favorite. He's been my favorite ever since I was a kid. I remember watching cartoons, reading comics. I even played the games, like, the first one on the PlayStation, I believe that's what it was. I think that's the home for the meme where he's just walking, looking like he's sat on the building while everything's happening around him. But then you have the GOAT, in my opinion. It might change by the end of this video, but before playing these games, the GOAT for me was Spider-Man 2, and that's obviously almost everyone's favorite. But I also played, Spider-Man 3, Ultimate Alliance, Ultimate Spider-Man was also a good one for me. And then obviously you had to play Shattered Dimensions, Web of Shadows, all the Spider-Mans that we've got past that, and then the Amazing Spider-Man, and those two we don't talk about. But I played a lot of Spider-Man games, but then this new one came out for the PS4 back in 2018, along with Red Dead Redemption and God of War in the same year. And as you can imagine, I just missed out on a few games, and Spider-Man was one of them. And in that year, it's easy for a great game like that to be left behind. And I don't exactly know what I was playing over it, but I know I did play God of War a little bit as well as Red Dead. But surprisingly, I just never got around to playing Spider-Man at all. Like, I just didn't play it. But finally, years later, 2020, it comes out that Spider-Man is getting a remaster. They changed Peter, and that was a whole entire thing with people kind of not enjoying the look of Peter. But for me, finally playing this game and only ever seeing screenshots of the old Peter Parker, this one I've warmed up to, and honestly, I like this one a lot better. It just looks better with Yuri Lowenthal. Like, I believe that now I understand why they actually decided to go with it, because at first people were like, what do you mean? Because I guess the whole entire reasoning on why they decided to change the face model was that it would fit Yuri's voice a lot better. And honestly, I understand it now because I looked at comparisons and I'm like, I like the new one a lot better. But given I am a tiny bit biased because I ended up playing this one as my first experience with the game. But playing this, it was honestly a grind. I ended up playing this probably on and off for about a week. And because I had work, and obviously I can't exactly put as much time, but playing it for the first time, I found myself just swinging and just kind of having that love that I felt in Spider-Man 2 all over again, of just having random crimes that I could stop and like just fight thugs or whoever it may be. I could save something, defuse bombs, do these bases, look for landmarks, and all of this, like look for backpacks. Like, I could look for a whole bunch of stuff, and there was so much to do just swinging around. I just found myself sometimes just sitting in photo mode, swinging around, taking a photo, trying to make it look as cool as possible. And then the story was good. The story was honestly really good because I have not really watched the trailers other than the reveal back in 2018. But other than that, I completely forgot about the trailers, nor did I even watch them. And I think there was one for the remastered, but I didn't watch that either. I just seen pictures of the new Peter Parker, and I was like, you know what? I'll buy Miles Morales, the game, or the Ultimate Edition, whatever it is, to get this version and get the remastered version right with it. So that's what I did, and I played this one first, and I enjoyed the story. I mean, you kind of obviously can, reading the comics, I guess you should say, it's kind of a disservice a little bit in like kind of having the suspense that maybe other people could get, because obviously when you see certain characters or certain things kind of building towards something, you obviously, when you first see Otto, you're like, oh yeah, you're Doc Ock, we know where this is going. But then you see this Sinister Six start forming, and then you realize, oh well, there's one left, we know who that's going to be, and it's Doc Ock. But even with that, me knowing who exactly it's going to be, I did realize that I was still hype. I was hype, and I was feeling the emotion from the kind of performance that Yuri was given. Like, he probably is my favorite Peter Parker, honestly, with the voice. I mean, Tom Holland's great. Tobey Maguire was great when he was, I mean, that's still probably my favorite in the movies, but Andrew Garfield, we're not going to talk about him, but Yuri honestly gave one of the best performances, and I mean, that's his job, being a voice actor and giving that performance to make you really feel the emotion in the game, and I was feeling it the whole time. Like, even, I'm not going to get into any spoilers, but like even towards the end, well, I guess I kind of already did, and if you clicked on this, you already know how this series go, but even like towards the end, just the performance that he was giving, I honestly felt a little emotional. I was like, damn, he's really going through. But I was invested into the game, playing the DLCs. I did end up playing the DLCs, but I didn't have to get all the achievements for that, for the platinum. I just had to find all the backpacks and do loads of stuff. Like, it was a grind, to say the least, because you had to find all the backpacks, take pictures of all the landmarks. You had to do all the bases, do all the crimes in every single area. You had to make sure you 100% in every single district to get this platinum, and it was a grind, but it was fun. Like, I didn't find myself getting bored from this game, and you had to buy all the suits, which I will say I enjoyed, you know, like the suits. I enjoyed just unlocking them and just swinging around in different suits. I thought it was awesome. The fact that I can be the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, or I can be the amazing Spider-Man suit. I could swing around in the Far From Home suit. Like, the fact that Insomniac put so much detail and so much love into this game is overwhelming, because I realized I missed out back in 2018, and just being able to play it now on the PS5 and, you know, getting 60 frames on 4K with ray tracing, it was unbelievable. It was something that I loved. I loved every single minute of it. And honestly, this does beat the good old PS2 Spider-Man 2. Well, I think it released on more than PS2, but that's what I played it on. But this does beat Spider-Man 2 for me. That game is very nostalgic, and it'll always have like a top place in my heart, being like probably the most memorable. But this one definitely it's at the top of the charts for me. Now, we're still talking about Miles Morales. We will get to that. But for this game, it was awesome. And it was awesome to see Miles Morales. Like, you see him in the beginning of the game, and you're like, oh, I see. Like, knowing that, because I looked up stuff about Spider-Man before I played it. Like, back in 2018, I didn't want to miss out, but I just wasn't going to play the game. I don't know why. But having played it now, I mean, it's just cool. Like, every single thing that I already knew was happening, I still was, like, happy. To see Miles, I was happy. The death of his father, it hurt, but I knew what was going to come of all this. I knew where the story was headed, and it was just a cool ride. It was a cool, fun ride with Spider-Man. But then we go into Miles Morales, when you see him become Spider-Man. Like, Miles Morales, even though it was tons shorter, because it took me 29, I believe, maybe 30 hours to complete Spider-Man Remastered. It took me only 12 to finish Miles Morales and get the platinum for that. So a drastic shorter amount of time. Like, it was way shorter. But I did find myself wanting a bigger game with Miles. Like, the way he swings, it doesn't necessarily feel different, but when you visualize how he's swinging, and it just seems like he got so much more style with him. And you just, I don't know, I feel that, like, it feels cooler. You put on the Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse suit, and then you're just like, oh shit. Then you can even like put some other things onto it to make it really look like the movie. But I didn't really like, you know, something running at 60 frames, but then the suit running at like 24, which it was jarring to me. It was cool. It was a nice touch, but I didn't want to see that. But just a suit alone, like, his suits are awesome. I enjoyed every single one when I unlocked them all. And I did enjoy the story. Miles Morales' story was amazing. I enjoyed that, honestly, a lot more. Like, for it being drastically shorter, I did enjoy it a lot more than Spider-Man Remastered. I just did. It was a lot, I don't know. I always enjoyed Miles Morales' story more in the comics. Like, it wasn't as like cool as it has been like Into the Spider-Verse and what they give you in this game. But in the comics, I still just appreciated Miles more than Peter Parker. It's not that I disliked Peter Parker, but I just always, I don't know, I just was drawn more to Miles. And the fact that now he's getting love with the animated movie he was in, as well as now this game, it was just cool. And knowing who the Prowler was from Into the Spider-Verse, as well as the comics, or even the Tinkerer, I called Finn being the Tinkerer right off the bat, but I heard other ways people automatically knew. And I remember seeing Finn and hearing about the Tinkerer beforehand, and then she was fixing the doorbell, and she was like still fiddling with it, and I was like, I know who you are. I know who you are. And, you know, it was a cool touch. Like, it didn't mess up anything for me, but the relationship between Finn and Miles, it was cool. And when you get towards the end of the game, I'm not going to spoil something big as what happens at the end, but when you get towards the end of the game, I started getting emotional because I realized, you know, what exactly was about to happen or what was happening. I was just like, oh shit, this is happening now. And you could feel the emotion, you know, between stuff, and just even what was on when they weren't even saying a single word, nothing was being said, but you were just seeing what was happening on the game. I was feeling emotional from it. I just was, honestly, it was like watching a movie and you're at a really hype part. Nothing is being said, no words are being spoken, but you can just feel it. You can feel it and enjoy it. And that's how I was towards the end of Miles. The last hour was just nothing but enjoyment. And I mean, the whole game was enjoyment, but like this last hour of Miles was just it was a lot. Like, I just enjoyed it. It was like watching a movie, honestly. As for the platinum though, getting the platinum, I didn't realize I was going to have to beat the game twice. So that wasn't bad though, because once I did it the second time, I skipped all the cutscenes that I could skip. There's some that led you right into the game, so you couldn't skip those, but I did skip the ones that I could skip and ended up beating it in about 3 hours, which made me realize how short the game is and realize how much I want Miles to get his own game. But besides that, it's the same thing for Miles that it is with Peter. You have to complete every single district, doing all the side missions, upgrading your gadgets, unlocking all the suits. Essentially the same stuff, but one nice touch is instead of like finding backpacks or something like that, instead in Miles, you're finding these little time capsules that you had with Finn, as well as sound samples that you get from Uncle Davis, which I thought was a neat touch. Like, it was pretty cool to honestly go around finding these time capsules, reading the description of each time capsule, learning the history like behind, you know, what it means to Finn and Miles with each single item. And then for the beat samples, the music samples, like, it was just cool. It's like he's having, or I guess you can feel Miles having a bonding moment with his uncle through these sound samples, because I mean, you know what Miles does, and this was a bonding moment with his uncle, and it was just cool to have that delivered in this kind of way, because you don't really get that in other games. Other games, the kind of collectibles you get, they're cool, but they don't really have any meaning to them. Like, for instance, Peter Parker's and Spider-Man Remastered, it was just backpacks, but it didn't mean as much to me as it did like with the time capsules and the sound samples. Like, I didn't really care to, you know, find these landmarks. The landmarks are cool, but they didn't mean nothing to me. Spider-Man's just belongings didn't mean as much. But then you go to these time capsules and the sound samples, and it was cool. It was just cool. And the way of finding some of these sound samples was the interesting part. I did struggle a little bit on this, but mainly because every time I was doing the grinding of the last achievements, I would tend to be a little tired when I'm trying to find these. So when I had to find a sound sample in a flock of pigeons, it wasn't clicking that the sound sample was there in the flock of pigeons. So I kept making them fly away, and I did not realize that I had to keep them there and go invisible to get that sound sample. So it was interesting. But then obviously in both Spider-Mans, you have to find a grave and pay respects. And Miles Morales is Jefferson Davis, and in Spider-Man Remastered, it is Ben Parker, obviously. In Spider-Man, I actually found Ben Parker's grave really fast, but in Miles, for some reason, I just couldn't find Jefferson Davis's grave at all. Like, I had to end up looking it up because it took me, I was spending my time actually going around the graveyard for about 5 to maybe 10 minutes, and I could not find it. I was just blind. I really was blind, and I had to look it up, and I would highlight it for me because I didn't want to watch a video. I wanted to actually find it, but I looked up, you know, the location of it, and they put it on the map, and I'm like, I still don't know where to find it. And it took me like maybe 5 more minutes until I actually stumbled across it. And I made sure I couldn't do this with Miles. I mean, I guess I could have if I wanted to do like a third playthrough, or at least after the second one, then I would do, you know, the whole find the grave, and that would be the platinum. But I couldn't do that. I did that for Spider-Man Remastered. I didn't do that for Miles. But instead for Miles, I ended up just beating the game twice. And then, you know, right as the game is about to end, and, well, not end, but like you're going into the free roam section again, and you're probably finishing up whatever bases and stuff and whatever it is you have to do left in the game. You stand by a building facing the sun. I hurried up, went into photo mode as I knew the trophies were popping up, angled the camera just a little bit to get that perfect photo for the platinum. And this is going to be a quick platinum real quick that I'm going to explain, but the language of love. You could read this book if you like reading visual novels if you wanted to, but this is a $12 platinum essentially if you like completing stuff. I realize paying for platinums is a weird thing to do, but I enjoyed actually what I was reading of. It was kind of interesting. I didn't care necessarily about it, but I just thought I heard from my friend that watches Kind of Funny, and I guess Greg found this kind of platinum that he could just skip through. And yeah, if you go to options and click skip all text and hold R1, you will skip the entire game. It takes about maybe 3 minutes. You skip the whole entire game and get a platinum. But I will say I skipped a lot of it, but I didn't skip everything. So I mean, it did seem like it would be a good read. And I think people that would like that kind of romantic visual novel will probably enjoy this. It's not for me. I just wanted the platinum, but I'm sure it's for someone. But yeah, if you want an easy platinum, I suggest doing that. But as for Miles and Spider-Man, I give both these games, I give Spider-Man Remastered a 9 out of 10. And I give Miles Morales a 9.5 out of 10. I have to give it a little bit higher. Even though it is shorter, I honestly just enjoyed the story it was telling more. And also, I don't know, I'm a sucker for Miles Morales, and I felt like a lot of the side stuff that I could do was more beneficial to the story of Miles than in Spider-Man Remastered. And I just found myself always enjoying Miles Morales a little bit more. I put less time into it, obviously, but that wasn't because I didn't like the game more, but it rather, Spider-Man Remastered was just more of a grind than Miles Morales was. Obviously, you have to beat the game twice in Miles, but when it comes to like the side stuff, you don't really even notice. It's just more fun and kind of cool to look at every trinket that you find in the time capsules and the sound samples. It's just a cool thing. But both games are amazing, so I suggest if you do manage to get a PS5, I would honestly get the Ultimate Edition of Spider-Man Miles Morales, so you also get the remastered version of Spider-Man, because both games are amazing. And if you're even a comic fan, a Marvel fan, I don't care what fan you are, if you're a fan of Spider-Man or anything like that, I would suggest playing this game because it has a nice feel to it. Spider-Man, like I did play a little bit of Spider-Man before on the PS4 with a friend. I didn't quite like the combat, but then playing it again now, it feels better. I don't know if that's because of 60 frames, but it's just both games feel amazing. One is more gadget based and the other one is not, in my opinion. But you can go through both without using gadgets really. But I did find myself using a lot of the spider drones, or whatever they're called, remote drones, I don't know. But I did end up using a lot of those in Spider-Man Remastered. And then Miles Morales, I honestly I didn't really use much, to be honest. I had to use the remote mine a few times, but other than that, I just used the camouflage and venom punch and just doing combos with the venom dash, venom jump, anything possible. And it was just fun. But yeah, both games it's a necessary pickup if you enjoy these type of games and if you just enjoy Spider-Man in general. And also, quick thing, I would just say if you do beat these games, make sure you don't just skip cutscenes, or not really cutscenes, but don't skip the credits, or you can skip the credits, but make sure you watch that cutscene at the end, because both games they pretty much have the same cutscene, but they are setting up the next game very well. And honestly, I cannot wait for the next game. Spider-Man 2, if that's what they decide to call it, is going to be amazing. I don't know whether or not they're going to go the superior Spider-Man route, if they're going to go back in black, or are they going to do something completely different. I'm not entirely sure, but just know Spider-Man 2 will be played at launch, and it will be platinumed first time I start playing it. So just be on the lookout for that whenever we finally get a reveal for it, because just imagine, both games were on the PS4 and PS5, but Spider-Man 2 will more than likely be, I won't want to say a PS5 exclusive, but it'll be built specifically for the PS5 and probably have a scaled down version for the PS4. But this will be the first Spider-Man we get that is going to be specifically built for the PS5, and I cannot wait, because that is going to be not only a visually stunning game, but I can imagine the gameplay and everything is just gonna feel so good, and I cannot wait. Well, if you guys did enjoy this video, if you did, leave a like, subscribe, and you guys know the drill. I will see you guys later.